This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, hi everybody. If you have questions, go ahead.
Hello, Francis.
Yes. Hi.
Hello. Yes, I have one question. I have heard about your invitation to live with assumptions that consciousness is universal. And for the past 7 years, I felt like I have been doing doing this, but I still have a question. Can surrendering and not getting attached to results be performed as techniques?
Just the last sentence. Can you say it again?
Yes. Can surrender and not getting attached to results be performed as techniques for peace with oneself and universe? Is there a problem with that? And does that necessarily mean one would gradually realize consciousness is universal? The reason I ask,
You go ahead.
yes, the reason I ask about this is because I have seen many people who adopt this as a way to live, to the life, but somehow not. It doesn't mean that they realize that you say the biggest secret is that consciousness is universal. It seems like it's still like a tool to have easier living. And me myself, I have tried investigation. I know I am awareness. I practice being honest to my feelings and living truth daily, and surrender and not controlling my emotion or the outside situation. And I do feel that there's more and more each as time passes by, I feel more expansive and more synergy with the whole. But somehow when I read what, or I see on your video when you say that the biggest secret is that consciousness is universal, I feel like that is something more profound than what I have experienced. And then this question these questions formulate.
Well, it's a long question. And can you put it in a nutshell? Because you mentioned that people live and in a way that they are not attached to the outcome of their actions. Is that the same as conducting experiments into the nature of consciousness? Is that your question?
I wouldn't repeat. Okay, so living with assumptions that consciousness is universal, and maybe I just want to hear more about it, because I feel like surrendering and not getting attached to the results of action might still be used as like a clever skills to be smooth in life. And I feel like realizing that consciousness is universal is something more profound than that, and I want to hear more. Yeah.
Well, yes, in a way, because It surrendering to and not being attached to the outcome of our actions. How can we do that? It's impossible to do. It's a prescription which is impossible to achieve. Let me explain to you why. If I am attached to the outcome of my action, how can I not be attached? That's the question. And if I am attached to anything, how can I really surrender my attachment if I am attached? That's the question. So all the paths that tell you, be not attached, surrender, they are very impractical, because if you are attached, you're cooked. There is nothing you can do. Imagine that. Imagine someone is attached to a relationship, right? And the other partner is gone, didn't want the relationship. Good luck with telling this person who is now missing the relationship, oh, be not attached. That's easy. Surrender, be not attached. How is he or she going to do that? Can you see how ridiculous a prescription it is?
Yes.
Yeah. So, in other words, detachment and surrender has to come from understanding, has to come naturally, spontaneously, has to come with our deepest intent, meaning with our deepest yes, seeing, yes, that's what I want to do. I agree completely. That is possible only through understanding. So that's why when I say, live your life based upon the assumption that awareness is universal, I'm not saying that for people who want a better life, for people who want the relationship to stay alive, for people who want more money, more health, more. No, I'm not saying that for those people, because those people are cooked anyway. I'm saying that for those who are interested in the truth. And for those, I am showing a path of investigation, like a scientist. Is a scientist interested in the outcome of its experiment? Yes, in a sense, because he is or she is eager to know the outcome. But no, in that sense that they will accept whatever outcome of the experiment happens. There is this humility for the facts. So their goal is not to reach a predefined outcome. Their goal is to know the outcome, whatever this outcome might be, because their goal is to know, to understand. So it's the same here. The goal is not to have a better life, more money in the bank, better relationships, better health, to be more popular, etc., etc. To become a nicer person, to be more accepted by society, to have less, to be less self-conscious, to have less problems in relationship. All of these items are part of the what is called self-improvement techniques.
Yes.
And that's not that which we are interested in here. We are not into self-improvement, and we are not in new age stuff. We are not in crystals and auras and thought creates outcomes. We are not into that. We are not interested in that. We are interested basically in one single question. What is the true nature of self, or also experienced as awareness? What is the true nature of consciousness, awareness, self, I? That's the only question we have here. So, to live our life as if awareness was universal is simply a means to get an answer to this question. It's not a means to improve our health, wealth, relationships, etc. It's not a means to do that. It's just a means to get the answer to this question. And then, once we get the answer to this question, that creates the detachment, the letting go, the indifference regarding the outcome of our deeds. All of that comes as a result of the answer we get from this experiment. But we need to get the answer first. And then over time, this answer brings about side effects or bonuses, if you will, or perks.
I at first practiced surrendering out of being too tired of my own control. And then somehow at the same time, I started investigating the nature of self. I got into Advaita. And then the surrendering and investigation goes side by side. And as you said that in the beginning, it was like more like a technique to just be like having a break. And then eventually, because of my curiosity towards what's the nature of myself, it became more of a genuine surrender, and everything comes from a strong confidence that I can never be wrong. Like everything I do is how it is. But somehow I'm still curious about this thing that is called consciousness is universal, because despite of feeling more and more synergy with the world, feel more like I'm how I am each day is completely unknown, but with a lot of peace, with changes. I still feel like I'm not
What is your when we use the word consciousness, what is the meaning for you it has? What meaning does it have for you? Which meaning?
Consciousness is this one that's behind all the knowing, and that is shared with, like, is in all phenomena, and it's where all the phenomena emerge, all the appearance happens, and that all beings and all things share this consciousness.
How do you know that?
I have done experiments which seeing and knowing that everything that appears is due to different perceptions of different perceptions, including my body, the notion that this body is mine, or the leg or the heart, is all just phenomena happenings and appearing and disappearing. Also visually, when I tried a virtual reality headset and seeing how different perception can bring about different reaction, I know that visually I'm just triggered. These triggers create this sense of what of what is out there or what is in here. But yes, beyond these experiments, I still feel like I have to examine it like this in order to get into this understanding. It's not something natural.
Yeah, because the experiment you described to me, let me refine my question. Let me more surgical with my question to you. How do these experiments that you mentioned, perception, show that consciousness is shared by all?
I guess it doesn't.
Right. And that's a missing link.
Yes.
Now, the good news is that it doesn't show either that it isn't shared by all, right?
Yeah.
So that's at least a positive outcome of this investigation, which is that you are open to the possibility that it is shared by all. Now, if we try to go a little one step further, would you agree that perceiving has something real to it?
Yes.
In other words, we cannot pretend there is no perceiving in this moment.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So there is something absolutely certain about perceiving. Would you agree also that that which is real and certain about perceiving is not really the phenomenal aspect of perceiving?
When you say that it's not phenomenal aspect.
No, that which
perceiving.
is certain, that which is certain and real about perceiving is not the phenomenal aspect, meaning the perceptions themselves. I'm saying that because the perceptions could be a dream or a hallucination. After all, every night our perceptions are lying to us.
Yes.
But the fact that we are conscious that there is consciousness of these perceptions is still real.
Yes.
Therefore, when we say that perceiving is real, we don't say that because of the perception. Because the perceptions can be illusions, like dreams.
Yes.
Right? In other words, our experience of the reality of perceiving doesn't come from our experience of bodily sensations, sense perceptions, and thoughts. It has its source in a different type of experience.
Yes.
Which is what we call the experience of consciousness as a reality. Because this certainty, this reality belongs to consciousness itself, not to the phenomena it perceives.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Let me try to show that in a different way so we can make it sure. Although your yes saying is sufficient, but let me prove this to you in a slightly different manner, which is, let's assume for the sake of the argument, let's assume that consciousness is not real, that whatever it is we call I that perceives is not real. In that case, how could we possibly have any certainty?
We cannot.
Because if that which perceives is not real, how could that the perceptions it carries be real? Obviously, they would be at best as real as the perceiving entity. So if the perceiving entity itself is not real, its perceptions are even more unreal.
Yes.
Right? So
yes.
that shows that this certainty that we have, that there is perceiving, that there is something rather than nothing, comes from a direct experience of the reality of consciousness. That's the first step.
Yes.
I mean, the first step beyond where you were at. It is this understanding, this experience that consciousness is real.
Yes.
That enables us to redefine consciousness as the reality which is hearing these words right now.
Yeah.
Right? Now we are authorized to use the word reality in reference to consciousness.
Yes.
Because experientially, we know that consciousness is more real than its content.
Yeah.
Now, having established that consciousness is a reality, the second and last step is the intuition that there is only one reality. So, in order to get there, we assume, for instance, that there is two different realities. We know already consciousness is a reality. But we could say there are more than one reality. For instance, the world that we perceive could, just for the sake of the argument, have a different reality than consciousness.
Yeah.
So then we have two realities. We have a perceiving reality, consciousness, and we have the reality of whatever consciousness perceives, the world, the physical world out there. And notice that I am not denying the independent existence of the world. I'm not denying the reality of the world. I am not like Bishop Berkeley saying that the world exists only as perception. Perhaps yes, perhaps not. I'm open. Whatever the world is there, out there, let's assume, for the sake of the argument, that it has a different reality than the consciousness. Then we have two realities. Consciousness, I, the perceiving reality, my reality, and the world, which has this reality. Now, its own reality. Now we have two realities, one perceiving the other. In order for perceiving to take place, some kind of contact, some kind of interaction is required.
Yes.
In other words, if there is a wall between these two realities that separates them in an absolute fashion, that prohibits any kind of interaction between these two realities, there cannot be a perception by consciousness of the world.
Yeah.
Right? For such a perception to take place, we need a medium, we need some kind of connection. But now, if these two realities are connected, they have to be seen as one single reality.
Yeah.
Right? Then the perceiving reality as consciousness and the perceived reality as whatever it is, the physical world, the other worlds we don't even know about, but which potentially interact with us. I don't know, angels, whatever worlds. All of that belongs to the same one reality, which is experienced as awareness. That's the important aspect. So the moment we understand that awareness as a reality and the reality of the world is the same reality, here we have it. Here we have the universal quality of awareness, or the universal attribute of awareness, meaning there is only one reality. Awareness is a reality. Therefore, awareness is this single universal reality. corollary of that understanding is that what is true of my awareness is true of your awareness. If my awareness is this universal reality, your awareness is also the same universal reality. This is the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And that's love. Love is simply the recognition that your awareness and my awareness are the same. That's as simple as that. In other words, love comes as a natural outcome of understanding.
Yeah. So on an experiential level, even for anyone who don't go through the logical analysis, when this person is
Well, let's go with I don't like the word logical analysis because it's not logical, it's experiential. To call it logical is a mistake. Logic is simply a way to conduct a line of reasoning. But when we talk about consciousness, the word consciousness either remains on the level of concepts, or for you, it takes you directly to your experience of perceiving.
Yes.
In the same way, when I use the word reality, either it remains in the nice realm of concepts of philosophers, modern philosophers, or it takes you to this experience that perceiving cannot be denied, that perceiving is certain.
Yes.
You see? So that's experiential. It's not conceptual and it's not logical. That's an experience, that's a fact. It's factual. So then logic is a way to deal with facts. That's an instrument which is okay to deal with facts, but facts are the immediate result of experience. So that's something we have to keep in mind. Otherwise, that which is important in our conversation, which is the experiencing of facts, the seeing of facts, becomes diluted and kind of denied, gets diluted, tempered with, loses its sharpness, becomes dull, becomes ineffective, becomes downgraded. And then we go to something, well, that's not important. Feelings are important. I want something more substantial. Huge mistake, because what we call substantial is just business as usual. We want more sensations.
Yeah.
We want more chocolate, more drugs, more sugar, more food, more sex, more whatever. More. All of that because we don't want the truth. So it's very important that we put the truth on the shrine. We can put the food and the rest on the table. But we have to put the truth on the shrine. And as I've told you, as I have told you, love appears as the natural outcome of truth.
Yeah.
Because if we put love on the shrine, we are in great danger to put also with it ignorance on the shrine. As someone who wants love, as someone who seeks love, as someone who seeks an experience which has a body component to it, which has a loving emotion component to it, because when we are loved, we experience relief, and it's a very nice experience in the body, and we get hooked to this experience. We need the sharpness of truth. And in the same way, it's okay, however, to conduct, in addition, the experiments I mentioned. Why? Because these experiments I mentioned can be envisioned in two different ways. In one way, they can operate a change in our mind, in our belief systems, to erode the belief systems that we are separate and to accumulate a body of evidence that supports the possibilities that awareness is this universal reality.
Yeah.
But the second way, which is even better, much better, to use these experiments is not to use them as experiments any longer, is to hold to the truth that we have seen directly through this experiential understanding of the reality of consciousness and of the unicity of realities, that there is only one reality. And as a result of the universality of consciousness. And then these experiments are simply about realigning the ways we live to make our life, to bring our life into compliance with this revelation of the universality of awareness. You see, it's no longer necessarily, it's no longer anymore a seeking for the truth, a seeking of the truth, which it could be through a kind of a scientific exploration, experimental approach, but it's rather cooperation of this body-mind instrument being now put at the service of this truth that has been revealed and realigning itself in all aspects of its life with the truth that has been revealed. In all aspects of its life, I mean, the way we think, the way we perceive, the way we feel, the way we act, the way we interact with others, the way we react to events that happen in the world, and the way we react to events that happen in the body. All of these compartments, if you will, of our life have to be realigned with this truth.
Yes. Yes, I feel way more resonate when I think of this body, mind, and feeling as instruments for the truth. I just one last question. Can you talk about liberation?
It depends, as usual, on the way we define this word. This word, for me, I would use this word as the first glimpse, no matter how fleeting, of the true nature of awareness. And this first glimpse has happened the moment we have lost the absolute certainty that awareness is limited. This first glimpse creates an opening in our belief system. In other words, this opening begins as a doubt. We doubt that awareness is just limited in space and time, that it is an attribute of a separate entity, either a physical entity such as a human body or a subtle entity such as a human mind. So let's put it as a body mind, that awareness is dependent upon and limited by a human body mind. The moment a doubt has taken birth, that's the sign of that a glimpse has occurred. Even if this glimpse in the beginning seems to get almost forgotten, it will never be forgotten. It will find its way, perhaps in a subterranean manner first. Will find its way and underground destroy the foundation of ignorance. And then the walls of ignorance will start collapsing one after another.
Yes.
So that would be for me the liberating glimpse. I use the word stabilization, realization. I reserve this word for a later moment in which psychological suffering has disappeared.
Right.
So there is an intermediary period in which I call really the path. The path that begins with this awakening or with this first liberating glimpse, and that leads to this stabilization or establishment in inner peace and happiness. And on this path, there is nobody who travels on this path, because the prerequisite to be on the path is the not knowing, is the doubt about being separate. In other words, the not knowing the answer to the question. So this path, we travel on this path based on the doubt, based on the a possibility that awareness is universal. The path that leads to this first glimpse is the path during which we are really in ignorance. We are not yet a truth seeker.
Yeah.
We are seeking the path. We are on the path to the path, but we are not on the path.
Yeah.
But other teachers would use these words: liberation, realization, awakening, etc., with a different meaning. So that's why, just as some will use the word consciousness with a different meaning, and they would use the word mind with a meaning with which I use the word consciousness. So we have to try to see in context what is meant by the words. For instance, often in the translations of Buddhist or Zen texts, the word mind is used with the same meaning as I use the word consciousness. When you see the word Zen mind or things like that.
Yes.
Buddha mind, our original nature, our original face, all these words are Buddha nature. All these words refer to awareness as I define it.
Does the removal of ignorance on this path of leaving a doubt that the consciousness might be universal, like is it the same path as you break down the last ignorance wall? You realize that there's nothing that divides.
It could be argued that there is no more ignorance. The moment we have doubts about being a separate person, we are no longer in ignorance. We are in ignorance the moment we don't have a doubt. So what happens during this path is that we have apparent relapses into ignorance. But because of this initial doubt that is the result of the first glimpse, we never go really into ignorance. You know, it's like this woman who trusted her husband, and one day while he was at this very late meeting at the office that lasted up until midnight, she found this blonde hair on her navy jacket, or on his navy blazer, this very, very long blonde hair. Well, her life and his life is no longer going to be the same after this discovery. You see what I mean? Just a tiny hairline. Is that the same? The first glimpse may be as tiny and as narrow and as fine as a long blonde hair.
So when there's no more doubt about the truth, does that mean the last ignorance is also broken down? Like, is it the same process? Is it the same? Do they meet there?
Here you have to understand something. It's just that when we are in ignorance, it's because we have a belief system in the mind, right? This belief system, we have inherited it from society, and without trying to verify it, right?
Yes. Yes.
So we take it for granted. So once this first hairline of doubt has appeared, then we start checking out, just as this woman, you know, the husband comes back, oh, you had this meeting at the office so late, and who was there, right? And he said, oh, John was there, Mike was there, my son was there. And then she takes down that. Later on, she's going to verify, you see, that the poor guy is going more and more and more. Deeper and deeper and deeper in his own shit, right? And
Yeah.
but you know, so then she hires this private detective, you know, and she has all this evidence, but you can never be sure. And the husband keeps, you know, game, yeah, we had this meeting at the hotel, but it's nothing, you know, yeah. It was all professional. It was a job interview. But nevertheless, there is such an accumulation of evidence that at some point she files for divorce, right? She can never be sure. Why? Because she was not in the room.
Yeah.
So she can never be sure. But there is this accumulation of evidence, and it is the same here. All the experiment we conduct in the experimental phase I'm talking about is like the investigation done by this woman. And there is this accumulation of evidence, you know, the picture taken by the private detective or key checking in that room, etc. All of that. But the detective is never in the room. Nobody is ever in the room. So the certainty cannot be absolute. So in this analogy, here is how it applies. The mind, which accumulates this preponderance of evidence that ignorance is an illusion. The mind can never be absolutely certain because the mind is never invited in the room.
Yeah.
The mind has, let me translate that. The mind has no access to the awareness that perceives the mind.
Yeah.
So the mind can never be absolutely certain, but in ignorance, the mind couldn't be absolutely certain either.
Yes.
Because ignorance was based on hearsay, not on real experience. So now the mind has switched from a position in which it was more than reasonably convinced that awareness was limited to a position in which the mind is reasonably convinced that awareness is universal.
Yeah.
So that changes completely the way we live our life, because our default attitude is not to be a separate person, but to be universal consciousness. Now the beauty is that we are awareness. So we are always in the room. Yeah. And the room is the room of the now. So although the mind can never be certain, we can be certain in the now. All we have to do is to go back to the glimpse. The glimpse is always present. Yeah. And that's what we do during this conversations is that you are always taken back to the glimpse. Once you had the glimpse, you are constantly taken back to the glimpse. And that's why these meetings have a special fragrance, a special quality, a special flavor, if you will, and that you don't find usually in professional meetings or political meetings or even religious meetings. Why? Because there we remain in our belief systems. Whereas here we are constantly taken back to the experience of the now.
Yeah.
So we are constantly, we go back to the room, and then in the room we know. And because the room is always available, we can always verify at any moment.
Yes.
So the fact that the mind has no access to the truth is not a problem at all, because we are the truth. We are the one with access, you see?
Yeah.
It's a problem only if we identify with the mind.
Yes. Thank you very much, Francis. It was so
Okay.
beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Francis?
Yes, Omkar?
Francis, I have a quick follow-up question on your discussion that you had just now. When you say that when two realities interact with each other, then they have to be the same reality. Could you drive that point a little further for me? My question being, why can't two realities interact via some kind of a interface, so to speak, while remaining separate?
Okay, you have two realities, A and B, and there is an interface, C. In order for C to be an interface with A, C needs to be in connection with A. And in order for C to be an interface with B, C needs to be connected to B somehow. So C is the connector. C is the connector then. There is a connection, is a transitive quality issue. If A is connected to B and B is connected to C, then A is connected to C.
But
So,
whatever, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Francis. Please go ahead.
no, go ahead, no.
So
Go ahead.
does it matter what the interface is doing? Maybe the interface is repurposing the reality from one end, doing its own transformation or whatever that might be, but that doesn't defeat or weaken the argument in any way, does it? That they're connected, so they are one reality.
I think it hinges of what you think, what your definition of reality is.
Yeah, I see where you're leading me. It perhaps seems from my argument that my definition of reality means my reality, no matter what the universal reality may be, so to speak, is perhaps what I'm trying to convey from my argument here.
Well, in Indian logic, which is different from Boolean logic, but Indian logic in Indian philosophy, there is this rule that if you have two things, A and B, and if you cannot have A without B, or B without A, they have to be considered the same thing. In other words, if you cannot isolate them, never, they have to consider to be the same thing. Are you following me?
I am. That's helpful. Yes. So because we can't isolate A and B here, no matter what C does in the interface.
Yeah. Now, let's go back. So now, once you understand that if you cannot have one without the other, if they are always together, simultaneously, if you will, or no matter, or geographically or whatever, they have to be considered the same thing. Now, let's go back to the definition of reality. And I will use the definition of Spinoza. Spinoza defines a substance. And he says that which by essence exists. In other words, he defines reality as that which cannot not exist. For instance, if I take this ring, the ring shape is not the reality because I could melt the gold into a different shape. But the gold will still exist. So from this metaphor, the gold has eternal existence, which is not true, of course, universal existence. So the gold is the reality of the ring. The ring is not the reality of the gold, because the ring doesn't always exist. So the reality, the substance, is that which cannot not exist. So therefore, if we use this definition of a substance and the Indian philosophy rule that if two things, in this case, two reality, cannot always exist simultaneously, they have to be considered the same reality. Let's take reality A and B. Because they are reality, they cannot not exist. Now, if they coexist, because at any moment, since both of them cannot not exist, they will keep having this simultaneous existence, and in the past they always have coexisted. As a result, they have to be considered as one and the same reality. That's how we connect the Spinoza, if you will, definition of substance and reality with the Indian philosophy rule that two things that cannot be separate have to be considered the same thing. That's very simple. Two things that cannot be isolated have to be considered the same thing. Because their separation is only an operation of the mind, but it's never effective, it's never real. Are you following me? I'm going back to the justification of the Indian rule, and the Indian philosophy rule is very powerful because it is eminently practical. Because it doesn't, because most in the West, we have this conceptual thing, and we can easily separate things conceptually, right? But the fact that we can separate things conceptually doesn't imply that really, physically, such a separation is possible. If you take the physical universe, for instance, and you have the assumption that you can separate an object from another object, is that true?
It's not true.
It's not true exactly. You remove this computer here from the reality of this room. But where do you put it? Can you put it out of this universe? No. No. There is no place to remove it. When you remove it, there is no place you can put it. You see what I mean? So in fact, that it is this deep intuition we have that reality is one. There is one Upanishad with this saying, you know, that if you remove from the whole, it remains a whole, you know, and
Yes, when you remove infinity from infinity, infinity still stays.
yeah, Purna, I don't remember exactly, but there is something like that. Yes, that's the same idea. So going back to this, the moment you understand that to separate things is just a mind concept, but it's not a real possibility. And therefore, that when you have the two realities, because a reality is that which has always existed and will always exist. If at any moment they are together, they coexist, it means they have always been together and they will be together forever, because none of them can go out of existence or into existence. Therefore, they always coexist, and because they always coexist, they are one single reality.
That's very helpful, Francis. I just want to go back to that example where, again, A is my reality and B is the reality of the world, whatever that is. A, which is my reality, I know that as awareness, and there's no doubt about it. And you mentioned that awareness is a reality, so it is the reality which is the universal reality.
Well, it's a reality at the beginning. I start my experience and I reach the conclusion that yes, consciousness is real. It is a reality. So far as I know, it is my reality. It is a reality of what I am. It is my reality. It is my real I. But at that moment, I am still, it is aham, ahamkara. It is not yet Brahman or even Atman. So at that moment, but it is my reality, it is my being, it is what I know to be. But then I ask the question, well, this reality perceives the world. So there is one perceiving reality, which is me, and there is a perceived reality. Now, these two realities coexist in the moment of perception. But at the moment of perception, they have to be considered one single reality, but because they will always, if they are reality, they always exist and always are always in existence, they have to be considered one and the same reality.
Got it. Can I say, Francis, that because I'm sure of my reality, and there are times when I don't have the perception of the outside world, the external world, in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, for example, can I say that my reality is a much more stronger, solid reality than the reality of the world? And then thereby, can I say that, which means that my reality is Brahma, no matter what's going on outside? Can I use that as an argument for saying that the reality that I perceive, my reality, is the universal reality? Because the universe may or may not exist, and whatever is existing at that point in Nirvikalpa Samadhi is just me. At that point, does Atman become equal to Brahman?
I have a little bit of a problem with that. Which is the following. If I consider the world as not real, as not as real as my reality, I'm going to consider also other people as less real than me.
Possibly, yes. I see that argument.
And that flies in the face of love. You know, there is something that bothers me about what we have to understand in the Advaita Vedanta tradition. When a sage says this world is an illusion, he doesn't mean you have permission to do anything. If it truly meant this world is an illusion, I mean, then it's a free country. You could do anything, right?
Not if you see the world as a reflection of your own self, right? I mean, you could start with...
Why not? Why not? Because then people, they don't really exist. They don't have real existence. Only you exist.
I see your point.
You see, if the world out there is an illusion, all the beings in the world with which you interact, animals, people, plants, mountains, worlds, all of that is like things in your dream. As a result, they are expendable. That's a problem. And that's exactly that which bothers me. And what we have to understand is that when the teaching says this world is an illusion, they don't mean It's an absolute illusion. All they mean is, in relation to awareness, they stand in a similar position as the objects and the people in your dream stand in relation to your waking state. That's what is meant.
Can you say that again, please, Francis? I'm not getting that last point.
They meant what is meant when we say the world and the people in it are an illusion is that the elements of the waking state in relation to consciousness stand in an analogous relationship as the element of the dream state stand in relation to the consciousness of the waking state. It's a similarity, it's not an identity.
Got it.
Right? So in other words, you don't have permission to consider the people you interact or the animals to interact with them as dreamt objects. You don't want to slaughter the animals or the people.
Understood.
In fact, you have to go to a deeper connection and to understand that this world is you, that these people and these animals are endowed with the same awareness as you are, and that they suffer and they experience in the same way as you do, and that ultimately they are you, which is a very different relationship than the one, oh, just a dream, let's kill them. So that's why there is a danger in absolute idealism in which I consider the world as an illusion. To consider it as an illusion is just a pedagogical step which is used in the Vedantic teachings to make people aware that there is a higher reality than this world that appears, and that this higher reality, it has to be found as this awareness. But then the second step is that the world that appears is made out of this awareness. So as such, the world that appears is real. It borrows its reality from the same source, which is this awareness, Shiva. But it is real. Shakti doesn't stand separate from Shiva. Shiva, in the manifestation, becomes Shakti. The little seed of the banyan tree, which stands for pure awareness, grows into this manifestation. But in this process, the little seed has disappeared. The little seed has become the manifestation, and the manifestation is real. You see, Shakti, Shiva has become Shakti. Shiva doesn't stand separate from Shakti. Shakti is the phase Shiva takes. Shakti is a manifested form of Shiva. The movement from Shiva to Shakti and from Shakti to Shiva, the creation and annihilation of the manifestation, that's the spanda of the tantric tradition. That's this the universal vibration that creates, sustains, and annihilates. You know, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the three aspects, the Trimurti of the creation, sustain, and sustenance and annihilation. That's it's like when you do arti, you present the offering, you know, you have a movement and then a still stand. So the movement is Shakti and the still stand is Shiva. So that's the movement and the repose, it's both. That's it.
So Francis, the creation, sustenance, and the destruction, is it happening from moment to moment, or is it like on a continuous scale, or does it matter for our discussion?
I don't know, you know. Yeah, I would say yes. It's just that you know, our best scientific representation, which is not that great, but that's the best we have, you know, quantum field theory. You know, you have basically all the fields everything, all the particles are simply the quanta of the various fields. And moving from one notch higher or one notch lower, depending on which operator is applied. And that's this universal vibration everywhere and all the particles, and ultimately appear in the void.
Francis,
So our best model somehow is one in which we have this constant creation and annihilation, and that enables us a movement, in fact. Yes, go ahead, sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, Francis. I was just going to say, can I use this creation, destruction, sustenance from moment to moment as an argument to further strengthen the point that we are sharing the awareness? Because, like you said, the intersubjectivity, right? We are all able to refer to the same things and talk about it. And if it's being created and being destroyed from moment to moment, and we're still able to refer to that, that does mean that we are sharing the same awareness, right? Are there any holes in this argument?
I would prefer that we share the same reality. Because remember that I define awareness as reality. Awareness is the reality that perceives. So it doesn't limit awareness because to the act of perception. Often people limit awareness because they see awareness as just perceiving. If we see awareness as a reality that perceives, perceiving becomes simply an attribute of awareness, but there could be other attributes such as awareness is the reality that understands. Awareness is a reality that loves. Awareness is a reality that creates. Awareness is a reality that sustains. Awareness is a reality that annihilates. Awareness is the reality of all the mathematical ideas. Awareness is the reality of beauty. So there are so many possible attributes to reality other than perceiving. So that's why it's so important to understand that awareness as, if we awareness we construe consciousness or awareness just as a function of perceiving, we don't have the whole of reality by far. We are limiting it. That's why, however, the perceiving aspect of reality gives us a path to the experience of reality. And that's why in the Vedantic tradition, the emphasis is put on awareness, on the perceiving quality of reality. Because in ignorance, we say, okay, I am not the world because I perceive the world. So the student is told, well, but look at your thoughts. You perceive your thoughts. So you are not your thoughts. You perceive your body. So according to your own line in the sand that you have drawn, you are not your body. And then the student kind of becomes out of sort, and the teacher tells him, you are that now. You are nothing perceived. You see, so then he has a glimpse of the independence, of the freedom of reality. But in this glimpse also opens other possibilities. That this reality, which is unperceived phenomenally and which perceives all phenomena, may have other attributes. And some attributes are obvious to us, such as intelligence, because it is the same reality which perceives and which understands. That's obvious to us. It is the same reality that perceives and that loves. It is the same reality that perceives and that contemplates beauty, that experiences beauty, if you will. And the experience of beauty is different from the experience of perception, right? Because you can see a painting and then it takes you to the experience of beauty. Another person is not going to be taken to the, so the beauty is not in the painting. It is in the different experience, but it is certainly awareness, right? So anyway, that what is important is not to limit awareness to the perceiving attribute of reality, but to define awareness as the reality that perceives, which leaves open the possibility for this reality to do many more other things. For instance, the reality that wills, that desires, the reality that creates, etc.
Yes, it does open the door for so many things, rather than, like you said, just limiting it to perceptions. It's very helpful, Francis. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis.
You're still recording, Francis. Thank you. That was a great satsang.
Thank you, and thank you all, friends.